Angry man yells at cloud. Is that working? I never know if it's working. All right, folks. We're in it. Angry man yells at cloud. That's how we're starting this. Um, Super stoked to see you guys for Monday. It's been amazing. Like, you guys are fucking awesome. Like, for real. Like, I know I probably don't say that enough, but it's really, really true. I love seeing the cool shit you guys are up to, the deep things you guys are thinking and figuring out. Um, Quick little update before we get rocking and rolling for you guys. Frankie Finn has been working on something that I call the side door, and it's a way to get really cheap but very profitable and high converting traffic. So we're running this right now on YouTube, and YouTube is ass side door. It's not the only one. Um, but we're getting buyers leads for like 10 cents. It's really hard to lose, for real. Like at 10 cents a piece, it's really hard to lose. Like, I mean, you can basically scale your agency as big as you want, as much traffic as you can possibly buy at that point. And the idea comes between what I call dinner and a show, which means if you have a show, like if you go with me just on that metaphor and like your business is a show, if you understand they also buy other things with it, like dinner goes with the show, then sometimes the cheapest you could ever advertise your show is not directly in front of the front door traffic, which is like sometimes, like in my niche, it's like 30, $40 a click. If I want to bid on, say, attorney SEO, I could spend, a couple $100 just on a few clicks. Or I could come in the side door and buy that traffic for 10 cents. And so I'll give you one such example. And this is the first time I saw it in real life. And it kind of blew me away, actually. I was working with an injury attorney mentor of mine whose name is Ken. And he was taking these little booklets and they were driving around giving them out. And I was like, what are you doing? And he said, my brother goes around and he drops them in the office at car places, like car repair places, auto body shops specifically, like places where people go and get their car fixed up. And I thought this is really genius, right? Because if you think dinner and a show, if somebody gets in my niche injured in an accident, they also are going to buy their car getting fixed up. And so often what happens at like a car getting fixed up place is there's a waiting room and you sit there for 2 hours reading some boring ass fucking book waiting for them to finish your oil change or whatever last repair they're doing. And so he would go to those places and say, hey, can we wrote this little booklet. It was more like a booklet, like a 30 pager on everything to do in a personal injury case, and say, can we just drop some of these in your waiting room? A lot of people are bored here and want to read about this stuff. And they said, yeah, no problem. So I asked him how it was working, and he knew his numbers. He was like, he's a mentor of mine for a reason. He said, they cost me $3 a book. Every time I give out 14 books, we sign a case. We're averaging $52 per signed case. I can't give these things out fast enough. And I was like, just totally blown away. But it was my first kind of introduction to there's a side door where people are buying these things together. And if you understood that, you could come in around, and there's even side doors of side doors if you really understand this, because like maybe for example they said no, you can't advertise your book in our waiting room. Well, maybe he could just put a billboard across the street and it would cost nothing. So there's lots of ways to get in front of the same buyer traffic for pennies. And so I'm going to be doing some training stuff on that. I want you guys to pay attention for, because I like you guys to have easier ways to scale your agency than what everybody else is saying with the send a gazillion messages. Not like that stuff doesn't work. So anyways, enough rambling from me here. Let's get into the good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Frankie Finn proudly brings you our weekly Q&A. That's as loud as I can go because I got kids sleeping in the next room, one over. Um, First question, Carlos just asked us. And this was a really deep, kind of insightful question, Carlos. So I want to give you mad props for asking it. And firstly, happy birthday, my man. Stoked you're 1 year wiser. He says, I got on LinkedIn this morning and there was this long post of the CEO who was lecturing us on macroeconomics, the coming recession and how ugly it'll get, how hard you will need to hustle, especially in sales and marketing and things like that. I replied to him with my view on why I'm an eternal optimist and why I have come to get convinced that challenges mean opportunities, or what you for those who are willing to change their paradigms, and why I think it's all about perspective and focusing on what you can control. Thanks again, Frankie Finn. You're welcome, my man. How do you put up with all the negativity out there short of spending half your day curating your feeds or training the algorithms, or last resort, quitting social media altogether? Carlos, that's like I said, there's a couple of things in there. What's up, Nikki Two Angels? Um, so here's the first thing. you're not going to avoid negativity in this world, not on this planet. If you want to exist in this space, like it's just not going to happen. And so the first thing I would say is like I don't try and completely eliminate a negativity to the point where if I feel like if I entertain a negative thought for a minute, we don't always create just because we have a negative thought for a moment. Doesn't mean every like little thought's going to manifest. Like when you think about it, like every time you get out on a plane in your life, a certain number of people are entertaining the thought that that plane is going to crash. But that doesn't mean like one little negative thought got you and that's going to be your reality. So when I find myself in those things, and I just want to share a perspective that works for me, I'm not saying this is like the only way, the be all end all way, but for me personally, whenever I notice myself having negative thoughts, I try just to allow them. And I know like this too shall pass. So I'm not feeling good. Like this happens probably a lot more in parenting because I just wake up tired a lot of days. And so for me, I'm like just a tired, cranky old man when I get up. And I'm like, hey, I understand this will pass. I just let it be. I don't try and fight the nature of that negativity. I just allow it to pass in its own time. So that's the first thing. Second thing is I personally do curate, and you actually got me thinking. I'm going to pull up my phone for this because I actually pulled up my news feed right after you said it. And I realized for the longest time, and I'll tell you what I do is I click on people, especially like friends and family that can often be the source of that negativity, where they're like people you knew growing up, but you've kind of grown and changed and don't relate to them in the same way. At least that's true for me. Is I just put like stay friends but don't see their shit. So if I see negative stuff in my feed, I just swipe it away. And what ends up left, I'll show you my news feed from this morning. This is just like a random sampling. It's actually an amazing source of positivity for me, but I just want to show you what's possible with your news feed. And it's hard to see all these. Maybe I'll kind of put them up close to camera. But Luke says basically like, so blessed to announce that I got selected to speak in the largest trade show of my things. I don't know if you can see Luke there. Then this guy's talking about, this was Becker, Alex Becker. Many of you guys will know him, and he says that basically the most valuable education you could get is $500 in Udemy, and like 6 months of study on YouTube will make you more money than a college degree, which I actually, for the most part, agree with. This person says, despite the pain, I agreed with myself to walk without crutches today. 12:38 p.m. and so far I've kept my promise. So here's somebody like on an amazing healing journey. This person's talking about getting your VSL offer out there fast. This person said Facebook restricted my client's page from ads. That's kind of like one of those things. I know that person's doing something, so like those kind of problems are not like negativity to me. Somebody talking about the power of outbound perspective. Our man Chase. Lana's out there eating food with her daughter V, having some nice like healthy food out there, which is super inspiring that they're out living life. Onyx Singal says, what's the one goal you're going to crush this week? This one was really cool. I got to show you guys this one. This guy says, okay, coolest thing ever. Yep. Ever see a brand do a product demo in store? So this is just a Facebook friend of mine. I don't know this guy, but he's got his product demo in a store. So for the first time ever, they like have their product like actually being sold in a store, like, you know, like when you go to Costco and they have people and they have a stand, they've organized all that. This person, just a guy I follow, but just says, I was busy this week. Says, my book, Dan Henry. Wrote a book over the weekend. And this person says, this is Saturday morning on Maui, the new normal. And joking about the fact that they moved to Maui and get to kind of live their ideal life. So my newsfeed personally is my way, Carlos, of saying it is a source of inspiration. And it's designed that way on purpose. So whenever I see negativity, I don't try and fight it. But eventually what you'll find is if you eliminate the people who cause it, who write negative stuff, there'll be a lot of really cool shit left and a lot of high vibe people. It probably takes about a few months to do it start to finish. The other thing I would say is like, there's going to be some negativity as long as you live here. So like I say this again, but when that happens, like you don't have to like think if I entertain negative thoughts for like 5 minutes, you know, I'm going to create this horrible, horrible reality. Because then what ends up happening is you go crazy trying to be the Gestapo of your own thoughts. And it's much easier just to let them be and understand it'll pass and you'll be back in positivity. And that's what I do, is more like focused on the release than the trying to control it. So not saying that's the be all end all perspective, but just wanted to share a little bit of what works for me. Drew, another like back to back deep ones, my dude. Hey Frankie, hope you're doing well. Congrats on the new edition. Thank you, brother. We talked a bit about before about how you do retargeting campaigns for PI attorneys, and you recommended focusing on trucking accidents. We haven't been able to generate enough volume to predict trucking accidents, but we do on motorcycle. I was wondering if that retargeting campaign is still a strong initial offer to bring new clients on. We're looking for a new angle, and I'm really tired of the constant LinkedIn outreach and insane expectations by new clients for a 300% ROI and no lost leads in 7 days. LOL. I'm close to turning away from PI altogether, but I hope to reach out to you for any recommendation first. Drew, I got a couple ideas on that. Um, and that is, like I said, another deep question. I'll tell you, the answer, the way you frame the question to me implies that you're at least thinking about, like, I'm almost at my wit's end with this niche. And I'll tell you, there are very good reasons to leave a niche, and it's usually if, like, you just don't relate to the people and you don't, like, kind of share their mindset and you don't like them. Um, the reason not to leave a niche, and this happens all the time, is I see people, they want to leave because they're frustrated that it's not working the way they want it to, and so they give up prematurely in order to seek, like, an easier, greener pasture. And what ends up happening is every niche has, like, its own unique terms and nuances, and you have to relearn them every single time you pick a new niche. So if you, I'm not saying you are that person, but, like, there's people who change niches every 5 minutes, and because of it, they never get to build any momentum. So that's part of the challenge right there. Now, having said that, there's a couple of things that jumped out at me that said there's probably some underlying shit that you may not be aware of that's potentially making it a lot harder on you. Firstly, is this idea that, okay, we mentioned the retargeting campaign, but that's not actually the offer. The offer is the outcomes which we're creating for lawyers. In this case, is like a whole bunch of, like, cheap phone calls and leads and things like that, mixed together. I kind of am purposely ambiguous a little bit on the details because I've been copied so many times in this niche. But what I'm saying is, we're not selling retargeting or leads or even really any of those things. We're selling the outcome of those, which in my niche is, like, in the same one as yours, is mostly like signed cases and, like, people in the door and, like, accident clients and things like that. So it's important to understand that, like, if you think what you're offering is what you're for sale, like, you'll actually make a really weak offer, because you'll say basically, like, I wrote about this extensively in the book, but here's a hammer, and if you, as long as you're selling hammers, you're gonna have a hard time, instead of saying, like, here's your finished kitchen so you guys can have big kitchen parties with friends and family here. So we want to think in terms of outcomes, is what I'm saying there. The next thing you mentioned is you're tired of the constant LinkedIn outreach and insane expectations. Those are two different things. So if you're doing a shit ton of LinkedIn outreach, that tells me actually that probably your offer itself is hard to sell, and you're having to make up for it with lots of volume. And as well, usually when we think about volume, in my experience of, like, how can I contact as many lawyers as possible or whatever, we don't do, like, a quality analysis. And nobody will tell you this before you get started, but this is just my experience after 15 years of doing this, is not every client is worth working with. Like, there's a lot of clients that frankly fucking suck. And so I would say 80% of clients suck for different reasons. Some of them because they just don't have the cash to work together. Some clients suck because they have bad attitudes. Some suck because they're still too small and just kind of getting off the ground and trying to, like, build momentum and traction. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they don't make good partners in business because they don't yet have, like, thriving businesses. So usually what I'm saying is chances are you're probably, like, because you're doing volume, it's a lot of wasted effort, in my opinion, and not thinking strategically enough about it. And what I mean by that is really simple. Is, like, I see this over and over in every market. So people jump niches often, and what they'll do is they don't, unknowingly, because they're thinking volume, they aim for the bottom 20% of the market, the people who are struggling and, having a hard time. And it makes logical sense because they need marketing services, but these are the people I describe in my book as not having shoes. In other words, they're not really buyers of things. And then there's the companies often that are doing, like, 100 million, and we often think, oh, they already have it figured out. What would they need me for? But actually, the bigger they get, the more problems they have in those systems, and the more they actually need your help. It's really the opposite. But what ends up happening is when people go for the bottom of the market, they'll just drive you fucking crazy for endless number of reasons. Like, I can think about the first lawyer I ever had was an amazing human being. His name was Tony. But after a while, I just realized he was a shitty partner. And what happened with Tony is, We signed up and we generated him a bunch of phone calls. And what I found out, Tony was really a lawyer, not like an entrepreneur playing a lawyer. But what that meant is he spent half his day in court. And so half the time I would generate phone calls for the guy and he just didn't answer. And it would just go to his voicemail and he never called people back. And then half the time he would be in between court. And so he would answer it in this like hurried, annoyed kind of tone. Like, hey, it's Tony. What do you need? And like, yeah, okay. You got any other questions? All right, hang up. And like, talk to you later. And he never like closed any of the calls. I could have sent him a million calls. He was waiting for somebody to say, dear fine sir, here's my credit card. Can I please give it to you? And so that's my way of saying like, if you don't like think hard enough about the kind of clients you want and you prospect with volume, most clients will drive you crazy because that's just the kind of clients they are. They'll drive fucking anyone crazy. So, and then the other thing that jumped out at me as well, like I said, because there were a few things that kind of sounded like they were going on simultaneously, is why are they having expectations of 300% in 7 days? Because expectations to me are not a set in stone. They're fluid and they're largely based on two things, especially in the beginning phase. Thing number one is like the promise you make that gets them in the door. The bigger and more overt and gigantic sounding that promise is, the more their expectations are going to be out of touch with reality. And that's why I say, like, to me, it's much better to have smaller but more meaningful promises. Like, it's better to say, like, I'll make it so on the phone you never have to hear, like, I got to talk to my cousin, brother, uncle again, than it is to say, like, we're going to 300K, we'll add an extra 300K a month to you. We're going to 10X your business and whatever. Like, those kind of promises may make sales, but they bring in people, like, way out of touch with reality. And then the other place expectations comes out is oftentimes agency owners just have this idea that what they do is called radio silence. They don't message the business for like 30 days and at the end of it send it a report. And there's a step before that where you have to get on the same page with everybody about what it is you're doing. And so I wrote about this in the book, but there's 5 things that are really important. You have to be on the same page about what results you're going to create together. You have to be on the same page about how long that's going to take. You have to be on the same page about how much that's going to cost. And you have to be on the same page about like how much we need to talk. And you also have to be on the same page of like any information you're going to need from them to be successful. And you don't necessarily have to do this all in one shot. It helps. But those are the keys. And so what happens is if they're coming out with unrealistic expectations, it also could be that you're not getting that out of your head and into like an agreement. I don't necessarily, when I say an agreement, I don't mean like a legal contract. I will do this, you will do that. But like, hey, we're going to shoot for $5 leads on Facebook. Does that sound good to you? All right, I need about a month to pull that off and we're going to spend about $1,500. And I'm going to talk to you in the next 2 weeks to let you know we launched our campaigns. Is that cool? All right, what I need from you is to get into your ad account. So it kind of sounds like that in the real world. There's lots of ways you can do that, but you got to be on the same page about those things. So I would check out those things because you probably have a few overlapping issues. I feel your frustration when you're at a point where you're sending mass messages and nothing's clicking and you're trying a lot of shit. I call it the question your sanity phase. And when, it leads to a lot of like, maybe it's me, maybe it's the niche, but I don't know. So like I said at the beginning, if it's the people, you just don't like them, then switch niches. But often we don't like the people because we're going after the bottom 20% of the market. And they'll drive anyone crazy. All right, good question, my man. Casper says, has anyone successfully created a secondary Facebook profile and used that to create a business manager and advertise for the same page and website without getting restricted again? What about verifying your identity on the second profile, credit card, etc.? Facebook blocked my whole business manager and after reviewing told me it's final decision. Chatting with support, they told me to create an entirely new personal Facebook profile even though it's against their guidelines. Man, you got to love that. Facebook giving you conflicting advice, right? Ah, Casper. I'm not laughing at you. I'm really not because this is definitely a laughing with you moment, but just at the absurdity of Facebook. So yeah, I mean, when you get your ad account restricted, it sucks, especially if you're using it a lot. Like there was a time, like I would say probably 80% of our business came through the Facebook ad manager and, the funnels we were running on Facebook. And when that happened, when they shut us down, like they basically shut down 80% of my business. I'll tell you what I've done long term because I think this is a bigger answer than probably you're looking for, but I think it's the answer you probably need to hear, which is that the whole point of paid traffic is to get it into a list and an audience that you control. especially your own email list or your own text messaging list, because Twitter can be shut down tomorrow. Facebook can be shut down tomorrow. Google can be shut down tomorrow. And the longer and longer you do this, the more you'll see that. So this is my way of saying, if you want to be in business 10, 20 years, then add the step of like turning Facebook into email traffic that you can control, so that, you know, like imagine you had built an email list that whole time. You could email people and say, hey, Facebook's being a dick, we're moving over to Twitter, or hey, we're jumping over to YouTube, or hey, I made a little Telegram group where we can talk on there, or we're on WhatsApp, whatever, right? Just giving you some examples of what you can do with an email list that you can't now. So long term, that's always the goal of paid traffic. When people skip this step, they make a lot of empty sales that they don't realize long term, like you're fucking yourself, because, you know, one day Google or Facebook, either they'll shut down the traffic store on you, or they'll lose their, you know, status and prominence, and something better will replace them. And either way, you lose because you weren't building a long-term thing. Now, having said that, what's worked for us in the short term is I just run my ads through like different virtual assistants and stuff. They have their accounts. I'm not even able to access them, but I talk to the virtual assistant. And this has actually created a way better way for us to run Facebook ads anyway, because I never liked being in the tech, in the nitty gritty, logging into the ad manager and looking at things. Now we have systems and processes to do that, you know, and I answer the occasional question over like chat and stuff, because my processes, I wouldn't say are 100%, but they're pretty good, and they cover like 95% of it. So I hope that's helpful to you, is long-term, get off of Facebook and control it. And, you know, whatever platform you get on next as well. Like I would also say like diversify a little bit and get off there, because I'm not telling you have to do that, but I just personally did. I'm like, I never want all my eggs to be in the Facebook basket so heavily. So anyways, enough rambling about that one. This is an anonymous group member. Is it difficult to get really good leads for lawyer via Google? When I say lawyers, I'm talking about lawyers who specialize in criminal defense, bankruptcy, and personal injury. Anonymous person. How cool is that? I didn't even know you could post anonymously in a group. How difficult is it? It's not really difficult. Like there's a lot of traffic available for that. In the personal injury one specifically, it's very expensive. The criminal's probably about medium expensive, you'll find. It's not cheap, but it's also not like a gazillion dollars. And the bankruptcy will actually be the cheapest, because bankruptcy lawyers are dealing with bankrupt people, ergo they don't necessarily make a lot of money doing what they do. So those different specialty areas will be a little bit different. But no, none of them are really that hard. It's just, like I said, it's expensive. And the hard part will be making it work profitably, because the traffic is so expensive, which is a little bit about why we talked about in the beginning, the side door. And I'll make a little announcement after, just once more for those of you guys who missed it. Oral says, do team members prefer gifts or cash as a sign of appreciation? Survey says, this is my personal experience, and I'm not saying, like, again, I never want to preach to you guys like this is the only right way in existence that one can be successful. I've found that often monetary gifts end up being seen as like a slap in the face, but personal gifts of just like, hey, I was thinking of you, never are like never not cool. And so I experienced this. I worked at this, this was back in my 9-to-5 days. I was an employee. I was working in a cubicle drawing AutoCAD lines on a screen. It was terrible. And I remember there was a guy in the office who worked 80 hours a week, and he was paid on a salary for 40. And at the end of the year, they gave him a bonus of $5,000. And he was all excited, like, I got a big bonus. How awesome am I? And I said, well, you know, they're only paying you for 40 hours, and you've worked 80 hours a week almost all year. So you put in like almost 2,000 hours of free work. If you add that up for $5,000, they basically just paid you $2.50 for the free labor. And then all of a sudden he was like deeply offended. That's right. I just got paid $2 an hour. I'd be better off working at McDonald's as a second job. Like, and then he was like, suddenly it was kind of just seen as a slap in the face. I probably poured a little gasoline on that fire, definitely. But you know, the kind of general census is that it's easy to offend with money. It's very hard to offend with a personal gift. I'll tell you, the only time personal gifts are deeply offensive is if you don't heed a couple of sensitive spots. So one of those are if you give people alcohol and they used to be alcoholics. There's one example. Or if they're like, say, vegetarian, and you send them like a 12-pack of steaks. So part of what we figured out kind of in our mastermind is just like finding gifts that nobody is like they're kind of like universally loved. And if you stick to those ones, you'll generally, like, I don't know, come out ahead in those kind of things. But I would say always towards personal gifts, like to show people you appreciate them, especially if you can actually personalize it to who they are. So like, I'll give you a real example. Last week, One of my lawyer clients posted on Facebook a picture of them in the 70s wearing a Kiss shirt, all dressed up for a Kiss concert. So I mailed him a Kiss shirt, like the band from, it was like $20 or something like that on Amazon. But it's a very personalized gift, right? It's like it's meaningful and specific to that person. So you can never go wrong with those kind of things. Joseph says, question. How often do you guys typically follow up with a prospect before getting a response? I'm using the hand raiser strategy from the book, and I'm pitching to increase the lifetime value of mental health customers in the telehealth niche. A couple things here, Joseph. Firstly is, sorry, let me reread that just real quick because I had something I wanted to say lost in the drink. Oh, when it actually comes to build, like closing clients, if you will, what nobody will tell you in this is that what we're really doing is building relationships at scale, and different relationships move at different speeds. So what that means is some clients will get on one phone call with you 5 minutes after they met you and buy your shit, and some clients will listen to you for like a year, 2 years. And so the point of it is to really, I have a rule of 3, which is buy, die, or unsubscribe. And I don't mean I'm wishing death on you, but I just mean there's only 3 exits to my follow-up process. It's like you're going to buy it, you're going to unsubscribe and say like, hey, I'm no longer interested, or I will follow up with you until the point of your death, right? Like, so there's no stopping. And the way to do that ethically is not to do it the way most marketers think about doing it, which is annoying people and saying, do you want to buy my shit? But actually like giving and distributing value in the process, like giving them tools and resources and things that help them be your prospects be better, or that help them make a better decision about working with you. And then when it's really about them and you're adding to them instead of like taking away from them, they want to hear from you. So it's not like this annoying pest kind of intro. Then also I would say, like you mentioned, that I'm pitching to increase lifetime value of health customers. That's one of those things that gets lost a little bit in word salad. What I would say to you is take that a little deeper to an outcome and say, like, how would they know that the lifetime value of their customer is now higher? And one thing might be like that just jumps to mind, like, and I made a free training for you guys about this called Dramatic Demonstration. It's on the YouTube channel. You can also find it by searching in the Facebook group, Dramatic Demonstrations. But what I would do is I would show a before of like, this is their average price by client, however they measure that. Like let's say they use a software or a tool or a spreadsheet or whatever. And then I would put an arrow and say after, and now the lifetime customer value is much higher. And when you're looking at those two side by side things, you can understand directly what they mean. What's up, Kev? Yeah, I feel like I having a little deja vu from having talked to you like, I don't know, 20 minutes ago or whatever it was. Philip says, how much do you charge for managing just a Facebook remarketing campaign? What does it involve? Philip, this is again one of those loaded questions that has kind of an implied thing. You are not charging for Facebook remarketing campaigns. You are charging for the outcome of a Facebook remarketing campaign. And this is hard for people to understand, but our tools have different values for different people. Like if you think about mining gold, like let's say somebody's digging for gold, a little hobby guy digging for a little bit of gold, the shovel might be worth like $1,000 a year as he finds like one little piece of gold. And imagine instead you're doing that for like, I don't know, the Barrick Gold Corporation, which is the largest gold corporation on earth. Let's say you're helping them with your shovels. You're probably going to sell a gazillion pieces and your shovels are going to be worth a lot more. And so it's important to understand that like the biggest thing that affects the value of that service is who you do it for and who you bring them. And I wrote about this kind of extensively in version 2.0 of the book if you want to do a deep dive on it. But who you do it for means that like if I am retargeting a little teeny tiny lawyer who's got like a little teeny tiny bit of traffic to retarget, I might close a few deals for him and it'll still be valuable, but it's very different than if I like retarget a lawyer who has 100,000 visitors a month and spends a gazillion dollars on advertising. Retargeting alone is going to be far more valuable to that person. So think bigger in terms of who you do it for, and then also think bigger in terms of the outcomes you bring them, because I mentioned this as well, is they have a spectrum of value from their clients, and the higher value clients you bring them, the more valuable your shit is. So when you think about like going after the biggest people and helping them sell their biggest shit, you're
the same service will become infinitely more valuable than if you think about going after the smallest people and bringing them the smallest kind of who. So I know that's kind of a tough one to ponder because a lot of times we think of our value like it's an internal thing, and there is an internal component of like, hey, I need to know my worth. But your worth also varies in the marketplace, and the tool you call remarketing creates different outcomes for different people in different situations. And so the goal for you is to identify the situations and the outcome where your shit is most valuable and go put it there. And what you'll find is you get paid a lot more for it. So I hope that's helpful for you, my man. Keone, anyone have experience hiring talent from OnlineJobs.ph for client fulfillment? Reading through Dennis Yu ebook and would love some personal feedback. Firstly, Dennis Yu's an OG, and dude is awesome. I would say anyone experience hiring talent from OnlineJobs. Yes, I've used it actually almost for like 10 years, off and on. Like I haven't like used it every day continuously, but I rebuy the service every now and then, and I've found the best people from there. It's a good hiring site. It's worth it if you're serious about like taking your business to the next level. The only thing I would say is like on top of that, make sure you have like good systems and processes that you're bringing those people into, because what a lot of times is I see people bring in people and then hoping that they can be like business saviors. They're not. They're really good for like, hey, I have these 10 repetitive tasks that I need you to do. And I actually just broke my rule and brought on somebody that I didn't have clear tasks and instructions for. And it turned out to be like I had to actually let the person go. And I don't consider this a failure of them. It is a failure of me for just simply not having those things ready to go. So like even 15 years, I'm still like making some of the mistakes that I know. But yes, OnlineJobs.ph is a good place, and just make sure you have the systems for them to succeed. Luke says, at the moment, I have a client who doesn't believe in a remarketing campaign, but they have a lot of brand awareness. They're fixated on new customers, but they can't wrap their heads around trying to sell more to their original customer. They said it's because that's what their email marketing is for. What would you say to them? I don't necessarily try and fight people on this, Luke, because to me, like, there's so many other people that would want it. What's up, brother? So yeah, like, I mean, that's the first thing is there are so many clients that have giant customer lists that do want to play ball with them and do want to do stuff. So wouldn't necessarily fight somebody, but having said that, I might try like a reframe or two. Because, part of it is they assume that their email is doing like 100%. Like I see this with lawyers where they'll send an email newsletter and it's literally the most boring fucking email newsletter on the face of the fucking planet. And so it basically says like law 75H3 passed through Congress today. The people versus blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, and they're like, hey, we're following up with people. And I'm like, no, I'm talking about like, hey, we got a reason for you to get on a phone call right now. We're putting on this event for you. We want to appreciate you. Like you have different things that you're doing. So the first question I do is kind of poke hole. And like, do you think like you're getting every single max dollar out of your email now? And if they're like, yeah, we are. And I would, just challenge them a little more on like, how do you know that? And the truth is, like, the upside on email and customers is infinite, right? Like, there's nothing to stop a customer who buys $1,000 thing one day to buy $1,000 thing the next day and the day after that and a month later and 5 years from now and 25 years. So when you understand that, they're not at 100%. And so part of it is just holding the frame that, like, hey, I know there's hidden value there. But I also, like, I don't propose it to them as, like, hey, there's all this hidden gazillion value in your email list. I propose something much smaller. I just say like, hey dude, like I had an idea for you for like a little campaign we could run for your customer that I think would produce this result, but I'm not honestly 100% sure, but you could like pay me second if it works. Would you be open to just run a little test and we'll try this campaign out? And what you'll find is if you don't make it this big hairy decision and it's just like, hey, do you want to run one little test? Because the reason I propose it as a test, because if it doesn't work, then it's probably not going to work ever. And it's usually just because they don't have the relationship. Like imagine you send a message to the customer list and the customer goes, fuck you, asshole, where's my fucking refund? Right? Do you think you're going to like change that around with some wordsmithing and some copy? Probably not, right? So the biggest actually factor is the relationship they already have to the list. And so if it doesn't work, I want to know as fast as humanly possible that it's not going to work and get the fuck out of there. Having said that, if it is going to work and there is upside there, I want to also know that as quickly as possible. And of course, when it works once, do you think the customer then says, or the client says, hey, go fuck yourself, Luke. We're done with you. Never. They say, well, what else can we do? That was so cool. We made 10 grand. What else can we do? So when that ends up happening, you want to kick some ass with that, right? Like, it's like, do it in a way where like hey, I just have this little tiny high upside idea. Like, if you really want to break down like what you're actually offering to them is you have this potentially very high upside thing that is a small amount of risk, energy, and effort. And it's done for those two reasons. Reason number one, like I said, is you want to find out whether or not their list is workable as fast as possible. And also, like, the flip side of that is after you get them, the expectations are in line with reality. Like, if I say you got 10 million in your fucking email list, even if that's true, even if like that, like you can build them 10 million in their email list, now their expectation of a result is 10 million. So what happens if you only bring them 5? Does that mean you're a failure and a loser? Right? But if you just say, hey, I got this little teeny tiny test, and like I think it like could actually do something awesome, and you open and just run a little test, then what ends up happening is their expectation is very, very low. So anything it does is going to be seen as a win. And so that's my way of saying, like, I would try just a little bit, like, how do you know you're getting, like, how do you know your email's maxed out? And then the other thing is, I wrote about this in the book as well, but there's a thing called a trash can asset. And I just propose another way of contacting their customers. So if like they're already using email, I'd say, well, do you think we could invite them to a Facebook group for a little test campaign, like a little test event? Or would you be open to, like, I just think of some other way, like an add-on, in other words, that they're not doing, and pitch it to them that way. Because if they're not doing it already, they're not going to fight you on the details of it. So I hope that's helpful to you, Luke, but those are kind of my suggestions on that. Tebow, the Ottawa Giant. By the way, dude, I see all your posts, and I'm like digging it, for real. I'm a fanboy of you and how you like promote your agency shamelessly, but when you got good shit, I think it's your duty to have to do that. All right, so I see the question. It says, what's your best lesson learned for hiring a media buyer / digital marketer? Tebow, I don't know if you saw the training I did the other day, but we actually don't have like kick-ass media buyers. And I did a training about this because I see all these people posting in groups like, I need a kick-ass media buyer. I need a kick-ass media buyer. And in my experience, I'm not saying that can't work. But what ends up happening is it fails more often than not. Like, the number of people I see trying to look for an amazing media buyer that fail at it is very, very high. So one of the things that I've learned to do, I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but I'll tell you how I would apply it in your contractor space, is there's a spectrum of like home renovations. Like, so just like in the roofing niche, to give you one like sub niche example, there's somebody who has a little leak in the roof and they need a roofer, and he might spend an hour with a hammer whacking up around there, plugging some little leak, charge $150 and be gone. And for all the energy and effort of going out to the house and bidding on it and all those things, like $150 is not going to be really worth his time. There are also roofers who like bid on $250,000 and up big commercial roofing jobs. And what ends up happening is like those deals often have like a different dynamic to get them. Like, I was just talking to one guy who said, I have to talk to the homeowners association in America. I got to like, there's a committee. I have to make a little presentation to the committee to make sure that they all approve this big commercial roofing job or whatever. And all things being equal, the first thing I do is I always make sure to specialize in whatever that expensive thing is in your niche. And the way I find that out, by the way, just asking the clients, I just say like, what do you wish you had more of? What kind of clients, or what do you wish you sold more of? And they'll tell you, man, if I could just get a couple commercial jobs, that would be fucking amazing. And I'll tell you the biggest reason I do this, Matt, is because it gives me like significant margin on my like ads where I can spend a lot of fucking money. Like, if I'm selling a $10 plastic trinket on Facebook, like a lot of e-commerce people, and they're like, man, I got to get my lead cost under $9.99 so I can be profitable. Like, that's a really fucking hard thing to do in my experience. But if you got like an $80,000 margin thing, Like, you have so much fucking room to be wrong. So what I typically do in those situations is I take one of the really comprehensive systems I've built for a client and aim it at their most expensive thing. And then I think about it not as like a single use like funnel, but I'm going to like take that marketing asset and clone it and use it again and again. So I see this all the time with like agency owners where they'll run Google AdWords for a plumber and fucking rocket for that plumber, even though, it takes like 6 months to dial it in. And they'll have this killer landing page and this offer and their targeting dialed in and all the keywords trimmed to only the shit that's working. And the plumber's really happy. And then they go looking for another Google Ads client. Meanwhile, if you took that Google Ads system and gave it to like 3,000 other fucking plumbers, it would probably work as is with very little changes. So how I get around having the media buyer to kind of like circle back to your initial question is I don't, and I just got sick of like trying to find like the most fucking talented ad buyers, and I focus on just coming up with one great system, and then it was easier for me to architect that. And then what I figured out, like, what would I need people to execute to make that system real? And often the system is more complex than what other people are doing, but not that much more complex, especially if you're using it. So like, we ran motorcycle campaigns for lawyers, and we had in there, besides ads, I had a licensed book. Obviously, there's like a landing page. There's a bunch of ads. We also had like a bunch of email follow-ups. There's retargeting ads. So like, from a complexity, it's probably more complex than the average solution. But because I get to use it over and over, I don't need high-level help, because the landing page is the same fucking landing page, right? Like, literally, the first time I run it, it says, the motorcycle guide for Florida. The second time it says motorcycle guide for California. And then it says motorcycle guide for Nebraska. And then it says motorcycle guide for Idaho. And because of that, I don't need like a super high-tech person to do that. I just need somebody who like, notice they're in Idaho, change this word Florida here for Idaho, and do that every single time we get a new one. So yes, we're using VAs with comprehensive SOPs. The other reason to do that, I don't know if you've ever read Built to Sell by John Warlow. But it makes the point that if you ever like want to sell your agency down the road, I don't right now. I'm not saying I never would, but if you want to sell it, like, the biggest thing people are buying is your systems and processes. They're not buying because otherwise what ends up happening is, in order to keep your agency afloat, they would have to keep you. And so when you sell it, you end up having a job for the next 5 years working for someone else, which defeats the whole purpose of being an entrepreneur. And the other reason I kind of think about it this way personally, I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, because I just know me, and I know that me, like, some days doesn't want to get up out of bed. Like this morning, I took my girls, and I was so tired. They both took turns waking me up, and I don't know, I was craving donuts. So the combination of that said, we're going to go out and we're going to buy donuts, and we're going to go to, Daddy's going to take you to the park. So that's what we did this morning. We went and had donuts, and I knew I could do that and be relaxed about it because I have systems running in the background and VAs running those systems in details. So I don't have to stress, like, are the ads getting turned on? Is somebody monitoring them? Are they paying attention to them? What if this ad stopped working overnight? Like, I don't have to watch any of those details because my systems are watching those details. And so because of that, I can be like this fucking lunatic guy just sitting at 10 in the morning in the Mexican hot sun eating melty donuts with my kids. So the other reason to do that, in my opinion, is because I think it creates a better, more consistent result for the client. Especially if you're like a creative type like me, and I know you are, where you want to do like figuring out new cool shit and ads to run. And like, the more you're bogged down in the details, the harder it is. So the appeal is always thinking, like, if I buy a media buyer, they could like take all these problems off of me. And sometimes it does work out. I'm not saying it never works out, but I would say it has like an 80% miss rate, in the same way that people who have broken offers always want to look for like a salesperson who's going to magically fix their shit and start selling it. But it's not a sales closing kind of script issue. It's the fact that, like, you made your shit hard to sell. And so I look at having the systems first, and then I look in bringing the great talent. Having said that, great talent can take your shit and innovate the fuck out of it. That's especially when it's fun. And it's not an exciting answer, because often it means you got to do a bunch of like boring ass SOPs to remove yourself. Drew, my man, says, thank you for your reply. I'm selling packages of leads at this many for a minimum, so it's a large upfront payment for them, but it's only real-time verified leads, which is good, but maybe not good enough of an offer. I would also say the specifics are lacking in your case, Drew. because this actually came up with somebody in our mastermind that they sell quality leads. And I was like, well, problem is like everybody says quality, right? So like it doesn't mean anything when you say like a verified lead or a quality lead. It's different things to different peoples. And so I remember asking him, like, what does that mean for you? And he was also in the legal space. And he says, well, we call them up on the phone and our people make sure that like they actually have insurance, they've been in an accident, still in the statute of limitations, they don't have another lawyer, and basically make sure they actually have a fucking case, and then we live transfer that over. And I was like, well, that's what you need to say. Those specifics matter a great deal to somebody like that. Like when you say I'm selling verified, the other thing is too is I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but often my long-term offer and my get in the door offer are different things. And so what I'm thinking about is like for getting in the door, I'm thinking about like what's the smallest, most meaningful, but like quick result I could bring them. And that may not always be what I'm going to sell them ongoing. It usually is. I like to design it most times so it leads into it, but it doesn't always. Meaning like if my long-term month-to-month marriage is Google Ads, I still might run a little referral campaign that brings them a couple of results. So that's not to say you can't sell leads, but I just think about like imagine you only have 48 hours for a client to just produce them a small but meaningful result. Like what would you actually do? And I make that my lead in. And then what ends up happening is after that works and after they're happy with how the whole thing went down, then I say, hey, I also got this long-term thing that would help you in these other ways. Would you be interested? And the thing about it is because seeing is believing, because they've had now experiential that it's worked. Like selling the big shit is dog shit easy. Like I've sold $100,000 shit in a fucking 4-sentence text message like, hey, do you want to buy the $100,000 thing? Sure, send payment link. Done. And it's not done like that because like my script is so awesome. It's because we've experientially worked together and they've had that small but meaningful result and therefore they want more. So that's my way of saying like I would, for you in your case, think about like what's the shortest way I could bring them a result, and I would lead with that. And that may actually be different than what you do long term, because sometimes your long term thing is just hard to get your foot in the door. Like SEO is a hard foot in the door. If I was still doing SEO, I would just say, hey, like, hey, I noticed for this one fucking keyword, I could get you number one real easy, and I'm happy to show it to you in 30 days. Would you agree to pay me $100 if I can get you number one for this keyword? And let's say I do this intelligently. If I would pick one easy to rank keyword. I wouldn't pick a hard to rank. I'd pick like a super easy battle to win, and I get them number one for it. And then at the end of that, I would say, I also have a $10,000 a month SEO package where I could do this for like a gazillion keywords. Are you interested? And you'd be amazed how much easier it is to sell a $10,000 thing after they've had a small seeing is believing. So I'm not suggesting go out there and sell a $99 keyword package. But I'm just saying, like, think about like smaller but meaningful results that you can produce quicker. And what you'll find is your shit will be easier to sell. And it'll just, I don't know, it's just cool in general. Kevin says, do you feel like a core offer and testimonial results go hand in hand? Like, can you have a core offer without pointing to or calling out past results and vice versa? Could you show results, testimonials, reviews, and be a generalist as your offer? This is just my personal, I'll answer this kind of a little bit backwards, Kevin. I don't think there's ever really a benefit to being a generalist unless you just like really, really love, like if you just love doing Facebook ads, then do Facebook ads for everybody. But if your goal is to create like a lifestyle business where you make a lot of money doing like high value shit for people, but you mostly are autonomous and free and get to like live life on your terms, then I don't think there's any benefit in the world to being a generalist at all. So I would say, no, don't be a generalist in anything, because it's just, it's a way more difficult path to scale. There are sometimes high paid generalists that make it work. So I'm not like saying there's never an exception to the rule, but it's like, it's a harder path in any direction, I think. And now as far as like, do you need testimonials, results go hand in hand? Like this is one of those things that marketers have been so full of shit for so fucking long that they don't realize you can just be honest with people and it works. Like for real, when I'm reaching out to people and I have a new fucking offer, meaning it's like I've never tested it on a human being in my fucking life, and I don't have any past results in a case study, I don't bullshit them about that fact. Like I just say, hey, I thought of this cool thing, and I thought of you because you seem like you would be a fit for this cool thing. I'm going to be totally straight with you. I've never fucking tried it before, but I'm pretty sure it would work. Are you open to just being a little guinea pig? I'm happy to get paid second on it after we get it working. And if it doesn't work, like, I'll make you look good. And you would be amazed that just being fucking honest, people will be like, all right, dude, let's try it. But what most people do is, like, I had a dude in my inbox the other day said, we can scale you between an extra 300 and 500K a month. And I could just tell the way he wrote it, it was a mass message, right? Like, it wasn't like, hey, this, I thought Frankie Finn, like, I could make you an extra three. It was just like, you could tell, it was just copied and paste to like 100,000 fucking people. Hope it lands with somebody. And I was thinking about it, and it's like, it's such a big, overt, hairy fucking promise that, like, the odds of being successful, like, what happens if we make an extra 100,000 a month? I'm going to be like, what a dick. He promised me 300, right? So people are always trying to get around, like, I don't have any case studies. And the way to get around case studies is just to be honest. And I'll tell you the different mindset that people struggle with is when I think about, like, hey, I have some new cool shit that would work for somebody. I don't just randomly fucking email 10,000 dentists and beg any dentist to try it. I think and I go, who would this really, really fucking work for? That either that I already know or with like a letter in the mail I could get to know. And I think about like the quickest, easiest way to put that in the hands of somebody who like would really benefit for them. And I lead with like just being real with them. Like, I don't know if it's going to work. Pretty sure. Here are the reasons why I think it's going to work. But I'll make it easy for you to try it out. And what ends up happening is you'd be amazed. If you're just like real with people, they'll go along with it. Where marketers go the wrong ways, they think when you have no case studies, they feel this like void in their soul and you have to fake it. I have to fake it. I have to like, yes, all these people have tried us and they say we're a wonderful company. Meanwhile, like this is your first client and you're like, I don't even know what to do if he gives me my credit card. So like you can be real with people way more than we actually think. And the key is like if you have an actual small but meaningful result and you choose somebody intentionally that you think is in good hands. So I actually just, with our retargeting offer, we did something like this where I thought about who could really, really benefit from my retargeting stuff. And I went through some lawyers I know in my brain. And if I didn't know any lawyers, I would search on the old Google. But happens to that I do. And I thought of a guy and I said, him. And I said, so I reached out to him and said exactly like the script you just said, hey, like, brother, I just thought of this new thing. And by the way, I talk to lawyers just like they're my dudes. And I say like, hey, like, you know, I thought of this new thing. I thought of you. What do you think? You open to try it? And he was like, hell yeah, dude. Strap her on. Let's see what happens. And we ended up doing one site for free, by the way. I said, hey, I just want the case study out of you. He's a very high profile lawyer. I didn't pick somebody randomly. I chose a shoe store, somebody with clout and influence in my space. And about a month later, he said, can you do this for 25 sites of mine? And I said, of course, but I can't do all the other 25 for free. He said, of course, send me a bill. Right? Seeing is believing. But of course, offer that little teeny tiny front door. Hey, I already got this thing. So that's my way of saying like case studies are only a crutch in your mind. If you got them, fucking use them. If you don't, think about like who could benefit from your shit and intentionally put yourself in front of them and say like, hey, I was thinking of you. But the key, like why people drop the ball is they don't think of who could benefit. They just think like, I'll just send this message to 10 million fucking trillion dentists and one of them will land. But I'd rather just write 3 fucking dentists. I thought of you, you, and you. Would you like to try this? If you're not, I'm going to go with B and C. And that's it. And that's how you like you can get started. But once you understand that, like it's not hard to launch new offers as much as people think it is. Because like think about somebody who can really get a result for. I like to think about it like if I could only ever get paid after producing results, what would I have to do? And it changes the kind of dynamics of it because instead of thinking about how to get paid first, you're thinking about how do you give the value first. And it shifts your thinking into like, what do I need to do to sustainably, like if I want to make $2,000 a month, you better be damn sure I'm bringing that client at least $10,000 a month. And so I think about what's the easiest, fastest, best, least mistake-filled way that I could bring them $10,000 a month of value. And who would be the easiest to generate $10,000 of value? I'm not going to go to somebody hard, right? Like you'd be amazed at how many times people do this and like chase the hard money. And I saw, to bring this kind of full circle to Carlos's comment, in the beginning, it was like there's a lot of, just like, hey, I'm worried about a recession. And my goal is not to like try and change the dynamics of the whole world, but you can be thriving. There's no reason you can't be thriving in your own little sub bubble of reality while everybody else is sucking fucking dirt. Because you understand too, like wealthy people, and I wrote about this in the book, but wealthy people work for assets, not for money. And assets go on sale when recessions happen. So even if a recession happens, you're going to make even more fucking money, right? So like when it's good, it's good. When it's bad for everyone else, it's still good, right? So like you don't have to be worried about the things that everybody else is worried about. Tebow says, my man, dude, I appreciate you sticking around me. I know you're a busy guy with stuff going on. So I think my understanding of your model is all about the irresistible offer so you don't have to have a sales call. But I'm crushing my sales calls because of my authority with my content. But I like your idea of no sales calls. But will it work for 12K packages? Because I'm closing 2 to 3 strategy calls for that now. Yes. And not only, I'll tell you a couple ways that I use it in situations like yours, brother man, because if you got some shit that's working, then I wouldn't like try and fuck with what's working too much, right? Like if you're closing 2 out of 3 sales calls, where I would look to close the ones in chat or all the ones that are getting left behind. And so there's a couple of places those show up. Those are people you like the 1 out of 3 you didn't close. If you turn around and just say like, hey, I was thinking of something else for you. Can I send you a little video of what I had in mind? Some of those 1 out of 3 people will come back. That doesn't mean gazillions of them. But the cool thing about doing it in video is like, how much extra effort is your prospect? It's copy paste video link. There you go. Like that's my sales job now. Copy paste video link. Oh, Matt's interested. Send. Oh, Kevin's interested. Send. Oh, Cole's eating donuts on the beach. Here you go, Cole. Right. So when you do that, it's like it's way easier to close deals. The other place I would look to do it is I'm sure you probably got some no shows in there. And then as well, I'm sure you're built. I think you've got a group. And the reason I'll tell you why it seems like your system is kicking ass, and people don't realize when you close over chat, it's not apples to apples. And I'll tell you why it's not apples to apples. Because I close more deals now through video and through chat than I ever did on sales calls, but it doesn't look like it on the surface because my closing rates are lower. But I'll tell you why. Because there's an offer that becomes before your offer, and that is your offer of get on the phone with Matt for 60 minutes. And for like a busy, successful general contractor, it's a big risk of time, energy, and just being fucking wasting their time being sold by like another asshole marketer who's going to waste their time and try and sell them like a generic SEO package, which I know your shit is not, but they hear a lot of that. And so you represent a risk just to get on the phone. And so there's a certain number of people that are right now curious about your shit, but just don't want to have to go through a 60-minute hoopla to find it out. And I learned this after you do a gazillion sales calls. There's certain like milestones you go through. And one of those milestones is, well, milestone number 1, firstly, is the first thing they're thinking about is just like, what kind of result can you produce? And a lot of times you spend like 45 minutes probing their pain and getting them to describe what it would look like when that pain is solved and how great life will be after. And all of that boils down to like, they want a specific result. And if you can just tell them preemptively what specific result, which is why I kind of like talked about dramatic demonstrations, because if you can show that result, like they say an image is worth 1,000 words, but a demonstration is worth 1,000 images. So it's like 1,000,000 words worth of impact in like 3 fucking seconds. And so in your case, like to me, it would just like, you're getting leads for contractors. It shows up, hey, I'm interested in getting my deck filled. Show them that. Like, this is what I bring you, right? And so when you do that, like you preemptively skip like 45 minutes of a sales call right there, because you can just like point to like, this is what I'm going to bring you. And they either want it or they don't, right? Like it either fits in line with their plans or they don't. And so, like I said, there's different milestones. The second thing they get to in a phone call is now they want to know a little more deeper is they see the result, but they're like, they want to know, will it work for me? So you basically just asked, hey, will it work for me specifically 12K packages? And I'll tell you, it works for 100K packages if you want to. Part of it is like we make offers that are easy to say yes to, but also like we clearly, when we come to the price, we articulate the value with it. And so what ends up happening is, like I used to know these guys who charge $100,000 to run TV media buying campaigns for lawyers, and it's mostly just choosing which stations to run media. They don't even create the commercials. Like it's not like they have to come up with the ads; they just come up with the buying. And I was like, dude, like how do you charge $100,000 for that? And there's no phone call in it either, right? You just write them a check for $100,000. I mean, I'm sure you could get a phone call if you wanted to, but most of their sales were without a phone call. And they said it's really simple. We can save them $1 million a year in their bill, and we just asked to give us $100,000 for that. And I was like, oh, that's a no-brainer. I wouldn't need a phone call for that either. So we sometimes forget, like, if you can articulate the value that comes with the offer, then 12K is not a lot of money. 100K isn't a lot of money if it means saving $1 million a year. So that's part of it. The third milestone that they get to after they've started wondering, um, like, what kind of result will it work for me, is now like it shifts to a more logical perspective. Is they want to know, like, okay, I'm curious, like, how does this actually work? Right? And a lot of times what people do is they bore people to fucking tears with technical details, like, hey, we run on Facebook and we got a pixel and we got a this and we got a landing page and blah blah blah. So it's I call it the 30,000 foot view, but it's just showing them in a series of like basic steps so they can conceptualize in their mind how you're going to do it. I'm like, this is ours for like the last 2-3 years until we recently changed to this retargeting. But it's like, we can target motorcycle riders on Facebook who all ride motorcycles within 50 miles of your business. All right. We have a landing page we send people to that says, hey, I'm going to give you this free motorcycle book just so in case you're ever in an accident, you know what to do. All right. Then the people give their email to do that. And after they give us their email, we send them a gazillion emails for the next year, and we retarget those people, and we follow up with them over and over and over. And every single email and every single retargeting ad invites them to call you if they've been in an accident. Does that make sense how we get motorcycle cases? So what they're looking for you in this stage is like a 3 to 5 step plan. And you probably do this on sales calls. You go, well, let me tell you what I would do for you, or what that would look like for you. And you present to the contractor your plan. And that's like the logical buy-in part. And then inevitably, if you get through that, the fourth question is going to come up. They'll go, well, how much is it? And the more you can like preemptively answer that question. So the reason, like my model, if you will, if you want to call it that, I didn't actually invent it, by the way. I learned it from a mentor and kind of made it, videoized something that was working. He mostly sells through Google Docs. But in your case, that's really it. It's like you demonstrate a result. You tell them who it's for and who it's not for. You show them a plan. And you present them an offer. And what'll happen is, in your case, is there's all these people who will not get on the phone with you, but would entertain a 5-minute video. And what I found in my experience is if 10 people are willing to get on the phone with Matt, 100 of them are willing to watch a video and learn more about how you do what you do. And so it's really like the closing, like I said, is not apples to apples, because if you have 10 phone calls and you close 2/3 of them, let's say you get 7 out of 10, you probably feel like a fucking G and you can be crushing it, but you actually could have closed even like 10-15%, even if that's like a lower closing ratio in video, you can close 10 or 15 people, because all those people who are like just too busy and too not excited about going through another sales call will watch your 5-minute video and will come out and say, I'll take that. So I have this experience where now like my videos are a little more public, and I like just have people reach out and just say, hey dude, ready to buy your shit. And I literally didn't know their name 5 minutes ago because they've come through the funnel, they hit the video, they watch the video, and they reach out. I'm like, well, that's fucking cool. So I'm not saying like my model's the only way to do it, but the reason I've shifted towards this is also because I just hated fucking managing salespeople. The only way to get myself out of sales calls was to have like a really awesome salesperson, and I did find a few over the years. In fact, I found 2. I don't want to make it sound like I got all the awesome tips for finding great sales, but I've had 2 who've worked for me for a long time. And I've had probably, I don't know, like 15, 20 duds. Had lots of those. And even the 2 great ones would have up and down days. Like, I'm sorry, dude, my girlfriend broke up with me today, and my head's a fucking mess, and I wasn't in that sales call, and shit like that. And it used to drive me crazy. I'd always have to coach them out of their lulls and give them the rah-rah speech why today they're going to make the sales. Videos are so much easier. And so the difference is, in the case of like sales calls, we're trying to optimize for maximum money, even though I actually don't think it creates the maximum money. But in kind of like if you will, you want to call it the Frankie Finn model, what I call the Wolfpack way, is more about like engineering it for maximum energy, meaning I want to make the most amount of money doing the least amount of shit. And the least amount of shit for me is to have a very well engineered 5-minute summary of what the offer is and how you can get it and what the next steps are and all that, and send that to people and let that make my sales. And so for me, I can just come back to the phone and somebody says, all right, I'm ready to buy it, dude. And that's it, right? Like that's the close. And we immediately transition to onboarding them right through there. So I'm not saying that's for everybody and like that's the only way to run an agency, but I found for me, the more you're optimized for energy, the more your like business works for you. Because I was never able to remove myself from sales calls before that. I would always have to bring in salespeople, but then I still had to coach the salespeople, and they would leave and they would quit and they would try and make it on their own or whatever. And there was constant flux in the sales department, and then I needed a sales manager to take that away from me. And the more I like moved to technology based delivery, like my videos don't have off days. They just don't. Like sometimes it's almost overwhelming because like we got to onboard a lot of fucking people sometimes just based on the fact that the videos fucking work, right? And you know, we've had to like really engineer like a smart onboarding process on top of it because like, you know, it creates other problems and other bottlenecks. Um so anyways, I'm like I said, I don't know if that's for everybody. I hope that's helpful to you, but yes, it works for 12K packages is my point. And it's just because, like, I wanted to reiterate, we're hitting all the things you would talk about in a sales call. You're going to, like, talk for an hour and eventually say, this is the result I could bring you. Yes, it will work for you. Okay, well, how does it work? Well, here would be my plan for you. Okay, well, how much does it cost? Those are, like, the milestones you're getting through. So we're just hitting those milestones way faster. And the more you can, like, speak to what's already in their head, like, the sales call is not necessary. So in actual, like, you know, like I said, I like them. And the other thing too is, I used to think like, oh, we need a sales call to like monitor so we're getting the right types of people. And I used to think that like sales call is how you feel people out. But what I found is like, if a person's a dick in a sales call, they'll also be a dick in chat, and you can find it out way easier in chat. Like if they go, send me that fucking video, motherfucker, right? Like I already know before I send them the video. Like, no, you're not a fit. If they're like, hey man, like I really appreciate you and I love what you're doing and love all your stuff, and you know I heard you mention this video and I'm super excited and interested. You mind if I just get the video? So they reveal their character anyway, so I can still screen all that in chat and I can actually do it way fucking faster. Um, what is the bottleneck with video? Is it just getting trust? No, I don't think. The bottleneck with video, at least I'll tell you from our side, Kevin, is not what most people think it is. It's for me right now, and I'm not saying like this will be forever true, but we're obviously like, you know, these are the real problems we're working on our agency is our onboarding process has to be as like succinct and on point as the sales process. I actually like at a certain point, once your sales are working, all your problems become operations and onboarding and doing stuff at scale. Like we have more of those problems than selling. Like oftentimes there was I remember the first time I hit like $50,000 a month with our webinar in our agency. I remember like just being so fucking stoked, but it created all these operations point problems that I actually started throttling my own traffic, meaning I would like slow down my ads and lower the amounts because like we couldn't keep up with all the people, the clients we were signing, and we're just making people unhappy at the speed of light, like how to burn a reputation quickly. And so we're kind of in some of those challenges now. That's the bigger challenge with video is that it translates to people who just send you money and say, let's go, but you actually have to do shit for them, right? And organize that in a systematized way. So I'm still playing with lots of things. Like I like to innovate with that, but I don't think there's really a problem with getting video and trust, especially if you can demonstrate your shit. Like for example, I showed this in the dramatic demonstration, but most people just say generic shit like I'm going to get you more sales, more leads, more customers, more something. And the more you can like specifically demonstrate something, the you almost have instantaneous trust. Like I showed the other day, like there was, I'm not trying to brag, I hate being that dude actually, but I showed like a picture of just like a bunch of payments in my inbox. And all of those, by the way, all those payments were all without a sales call, 100% of those. But I just showed like what it looked like to have an inbox like that. And what ends up happening is like, if you understand like this person's really done it and is showing you something they've really done, like, and they can do it, you know, potentially for you, like trust happens in seconds. So I think we think too hard about like trying to be the top guru. And the other thing is when you have offers that aren't super crazy hard to sell, like I saw an awesome example the other day. We were discussing it in Mastermind. This guy was selling pizza cutters. Okay. I just want to show you how like powerful the offer is. Okay. So those of you guys, you know, like, you know, you got the wheel that goes across the pizza and cuts it up. They had one of those as their products. It's a cool product, but it's not really unique. And so they're having a hard time selling it. And the person decided to go and package it with information. So they created a little recipe book of the top 5 or 10 original pizzas you can make with it. And then they went and contacted somebody who made original Italian caputi flour, which is the kind that is originally used in Italy for pizza. Don't hate on me, those of you guys who are like super traditional and call bullshit on the details. I'm just saying, like, the super duper fancy Italian flour. And they contacted those people and said, hey, we got people buying pizza cutters. Could we like give them a voucher for your flour? And they said, yeah, we'll give you a free $50 coupon for the big bag. And so they included with it a $50 coupon. Now, what most people will do who are selling a pizza cutter is try and make the sales messaging even better and try and wordsmith it up. But it's way easier just to take the pizza cutter and package in some recipes and $50 worth of flour. Suddenly now, like when you realize the pizza cutter is $10 and you get a $50 voucher to buy flour, practically feels like a fucking steal, right? Like, you don't need so many words to dress it up, and what most people are doing is trying to dress their shit up with words. So the more you realize, and in the case of your case, Matt, you already probably have a fucking awesome offer that's converting. Like, I bet you if I just listened to 10 minutes of your sales call recording, I could already tell you how to make a fucking awesome video. Because if you're closing 2 out of 3, you're hearing the same shit over and over. So if you're hearing the same shit over and over, do that in a video and let the video do the screening. So I think that's it. That's probably enough rambling for me. Just a little heads up for you guys that missed the intro, since we've been going a long time here. Appreciate you guys sticking with me this whole time. I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be doing a training on what I call the side door. And the whole point of the side door is when you advertise for like traffic, oftentimes buyer traffic is really fucking expensive. It works, but it's hard to make it work profitably. So I see this all the time. Like in my case, if I wanted to bid on attorney marketing or, you know, personal injury, SEO, and those kind of keywords, they're like $30, $40 a click, right? So like they work, but that's a really expensive way to build a business. It's also a really expensive way to test a funnel. And as a general rule, I like to minimize my risk. And I found that if you understand the side door, there's always ways to come into that. Like, for example, I'll just give you one, and we'll talk more about this on the training. I can't give you guys the whole thing because, like, you know, I've saved the kind of advanced stuff for the mastermind peeps, but I'll give you guys at least one little preview, which is like, for example, often when those people upgrade their system, they buy software with it. And I found that if I advertise in front of all the people buying the software, which are the same people buying the attorney SEO, it costs like pennies on the dollar for the same kind of traffic. So I'm going to show you guys some cool ways to come in the side door and find ways where you can get in front of the same buyers way cheaper. And it's based on like the idea I said of like what I call dinner in a movie, which is if you're going out, if you run a movie or a show and you want to sell more of it, sometimes the best advertising you'll ever do is advertising to people who are currently out for dinner while they're buying dinner, knowing that they're looking for something to do that evening. So if you do that, like you like shortcut the whole thing, and it's often, the crazy thing is it's cheaper and it's pennies on the dollar. And if you can do that, you can kind of scale any agency. So I want to show you guys some cool ways to come in the side door. So look for that when it comes out. That's all I got for you guys. That's enough rambling from me. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Those of you guys stuck to the end. And that's all I got for you guys in this video. May the force be with you.